Hello, this is Dr. Lukes, and in this video lesson we're going to be looking at how to do a quality oral presentation. So let's start with some general tips. So first of all, you want to separate your topics out logically. You want to plan for roughly 1 minute per slide. So if you're doing a 10-minute presentation, you need roughly 10 slides. You want to storyboard, which is to say you want to plan your talk. Make sure there's a logical flow to the material you're presenting. You want to highlight the main points in your presentation. You want your slides to not be crowded so they're visually appealing. And more than anything, you want to rehearse so that you can check and make sure that that 1 minute per slide did or didn't work for you, that the storyboard, the flow really happens, okay? And you have indeed picked up the main points. So rehearse. So those are general tips. Let's look a little bit more closely on slide construction. So minimum guideline is to use a minimum of an 18-point font. This here is an 18-point font. Personally, I think it's slightly small. I think you would do better to go a little bit larger, but I do say that's the minimum that you want to use. When you have a choice of presenting your results in a graph form or a table form, a graph is going to be really so much easier. Tables, especially on a slide, are really hard for readers. I see people say all the time, they'll put up some huge table and then they'll say, well, it's not like I expect you to really be able to read this. Then why did you include it? Okay. So graphs are generally going to be better. If someone wants to look at the data tables, then you can say, I'll send those to you later. Or maybe you have a slide at the end of the deck that you're not planning to show that you can pull up if someone really asks. You want to make sure that the colors are visible. So contrast is sort of an interesting thing. Different rooms, different settings, the contrast is going to work a little bit differently. So if you're doing this presentation in a very dark room, if you use very dark slides with the white font, it actually is sort of really hard to focus on that. It's kind of too dramatic. On the other hand, if you have a very white background and you're in a dark space, then that's so bright that you tend to, just feel deer in the headlights. So kind of play with that a little bit and check out your room before you actually do the presentation. I do that at conferences. It's just a very simple and easy thing to do. On your slides, use phrases instead of sentences or, oh my goodness, paragraphs. Now, occasionally I have paragraphs in slide decks that I'm providing to you all simply because that is the way I'm communicating my information to you, but really they are terrible. What happens is people are so busy reading the slides that they're not looking at you. And during your presentation, you want the focus to be on you. You don't want them to get distracted. Now, during the talk, a few tips about that. So don't ever leave a blank screen. If you get to the end and you're asking for questions and you had a blank screen there, that's actually really distracting too. It's just too much light. So have something on the screen. Colors, okay? Make it, just put a picture up there. If you want to be able to talk about something, you can just have a picture of something that kind of helps bring the focus in, that illustrates your point. Make eye contact. Even if it's a video presentation, you know where the camera is. You can look at that. That is your other human. You can put, like little ears and googly eyes on your camera if that helps you, okay, to make you feel like you're talking to, I don't know, your kitty cat or something. But make eye contact, even if it's just with the camera. When you are in a physical space making a presentation, avoid blocking your slides. A lot of times people will be between the projector and the screen, and that's very distracting too. No one looks good with that weird color stuff over their face, so avoid blocking the slides. If you can, use a pointer. Now, when I'm doing this sort of thing, I'm using the mouse. You can do that in a presentation in a classroom also, but you can also use a pointer, whether it's like a telescoping physical pointer or a laser pointer, but it's just very helpful. If you are using a laser pointer in a physical space, I do recommend that instead of trying to hold that laser pointing at something very still, what's going to happen here, let me see if I can pretend. What happens is you just start shaking, and the more nervous you are, the worse it gets. And when it's that little laser dot, that's really distracting, okay? And it happens to everybody, so don't just like hold the pointer pointing at something and trying to hold it still there. What I recommend is that you circle with the pointer the word or the portion of the graph, but keep the pointer moving, and then whatever shakiness you may be feeling is not going to be visible to the audience. Now you also want to, of course, project your voice. You want to talk loudly enough that you can be heard, okay, by the people in the far back of the room and the people close up. But you don't want to shout at people, because people are really intimidated when you shout at them. They feel very uncomfortable. So don't do that either, okay? You want to find that happy medium. I really recommend, especially when you're going to be speaking in a large hall without a microphone, that you practice talking and have friends come and be like at various locations in the room to make sure that it's okay. Don't jingle keys or pace. When people put their hands in their pockets, this becomes a real problem. It's kind of soothing, right, to you as you're doing it, and it's really distracting to the audience. You just want to go up and grab their arm and say, "Stop it!" Okay? Pacing is also really weird. You want to move. You don't want to be stiff, but if you're, pacing back and forth, it looks like maybe you're playing duck hunt or something, right? That's not a positive impression to leave with people. But you do want to use some arm and body movement. Studies have shown that people seeing your hands while you're talking actually makes them like you more, which actually makes them like your presentation more. So have your hands visible, use a little bit of motion, but just not so much that it's distracting. Again, if you do a rehearsal and have a friend present, ask them to point out those things that you're doing that are distracting. Maybe you play with your hair, or you keep putting your hands in your pocket and jingling the change in the pocket. Okay? Have someone that you trust that will tell you when you're doing something like that. You want to be professional in your presentation, so you want to prepare visually appealing slides. They want to be very readable. They want to be, white space is good. Probably not white, but whatever your background color is. You want to spell check. You don't want to have spelling errors there. You want to rehearse so that you know what you're going to be saying. You are the expert on your topic. Now, you may feel like, it's in a class and I'm not the expert on the topic. No, you just finished researching it, or you just finished conducting this experiment and doing these calculations. You are the expert, okay? So at that moment, for all the people in the room, you probably know more about the topic than anyone else in that room, okay? So have that self-confidence that comes from being that expert, okay? Now, especially with lab results, sometimes they're not that good, okay? Be honest about the accuracy of your results. If they're not that good, just state that, okay? And then finally, some last tips. Dress appropriately. You don't want people to be distracted by what you are or are not wearing, okay? You want to speak loudly enough that you can be heard. You want to make eye contact. You don't want to be intimidating with your eye contact, but you want to look out there. I have a little trick I use when I'm in an uncomfortable situation because I tend to be very shy. And so when I first was giving a lot of presentations or talking to a class, I was very uncomfortable with that. And so what I found is that if you have an audience full of people, when you look at people's shoulders, they assume that you're making eye contact with someone in front of them or behind them but in their general vicinity. And so I would just kind of look around shoulder to shoulder to shoulder. Okay. I've gotten better. Now I can actually look you in the eye when I'm speaking with you. But that was my workaround. And then finally, one last time, practice. The only way to do a good presentation is to have practiced. Try it before. Make sure you know how to transition from point to point. So that concludes this lesson. Thank you very much.